Good morning. It is a joy to be among you. I am the Reverend Edith A. Love. It is my honor and privilege to be present with you today as the minister of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Boca Raton. I'm going to start with the first stanza of the poem we just heard by John Donne, adjusting the language to be inclusive of all persons. No one is an island entire of itself. Everyone is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. Donne speaks about how none of us are isolated beings. We are all a part of the whole. I am just now getting my toes dipped into this congregation and what's been happening. Many people have told me stories, and I look forward to hearing more. I'm curious what all of you think. What does it mean to trust? What does it mean to know all the way deep down in your bones that people have your back? I love being a part of this congregation. I love being a part of the Unitarian Universalist Association. Why? Why do I? As Unitarian Universalists, we all agree on a certain set of ideals. We believe in the democratic process. We believe in fighting against racism. We believe in speaking out with and on behalf of those who are being deliberately marginalized. Dare I say, we also subscribe similarly to the phrase coined by Peter Finley Dunne in 1902, to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. I could go through and outline all the ways that we as Unitarian Universalists speak up for justice and advocate for everyone's needs to be met. But that's not the point here. We have abundant love to share. I have been so deeply and thoroughly welcomed here. So many of you have taken me out for a meal, spoken to me on the phone, dropped by my office, and even walked with me on the beach. It's been a little overwhelming. You certainly have made me feel right at home immediately. This is home. This is a very welcoming congregation and a loving one. You make manifest the words of African-American queer feminist author Bell Hooks, who said, "Love is an action, never simply a feeling." I know that I am very new here, and we don't really know each other yet. But I want you to know that I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and listen to everyone who is a part of this congregation, because we're all in covenant together. We made a choice to be part of the whole, to treat each other with kindness and compassion, to assume best intentions. I don't think anybody comes into a congregation intending to cause harm. And yet, because we're human and we're clumsy, sometimes stuff happens. So to illustrate my next point, I want to share a story with you about the formation of my personal theology. When I was a little girl, and Joanna was a little girl, we had a TV. It was about this big, black and white. It was missing the knob, so you could only change it with a pair of pliers. My cousin Tom used to come over with my dad, and we would watch old Star Trek, the original series episodes. It had the rabbit ears on top, I forgot that part. And I think watching Star Trek when I was yay tall is very much a reason. It's a part of the reason why I'm a Unitarian Universalist today. And you never know, a whole Star Trek sermon could come out. So, watch out for that. What I want to draw your attention to is at the end of the second movie in the franchise. When it came out, I was very young, and a family friend took me to see The Wrath of Khan. In the film, the ship is in danger. The only way to fix what's wrong is for someone to go into the warp drive chamber and adjust the dilithium crystals, or else they're all headed towards doom. Captain Kirk is in his chair on the bridge, and it looks like the end. And then suddenly the engines are back online. They can swerve out of the way, they're safe. And then the captain hears the doctor's voice on the intercom and he says, "Jim, you better get down here." And Captain Kirk looks to his side and he sees Spock is not in his usual science officer chair. He rushes down to the engine room and he sees that Spock is inside the warp drive chamber, a very dangerous place. The doctor and the engineer both grab him on each side and they say, "You can't open that. You'll flood the entire compartment with radiation. We'll all die." And Kirk says, "But he'll die." And Scotty says, "He's dead already." And the doctor softly says, "It's too late." The realization hits the captain and he walks toward the enclosure, which is transparent so you can see what's going on. Spock has collapsed on the floor. Kirk calls out to Spock and he can't hear him. And then he leans over into the intercom and he says again, "Spock." And Spock slowly rises from the floor, straightens his uniform, turns around, and he says, "Is the ship out of danger?" And Kirk says, "Yes." And Spock says, "Don't grieve. It's logical. The needs of the many outweigh." And then Kirk finishes the sentence, "the needs of the few." And Spock responds, "Or the one." And then he dies of radiation poisoning. The scene is heartbreaking and noble and was and is deeply emotional for me because I watched it over again yesterday. Duty calls us to do the right thing, even and especially when it might be hard. If you hadn't already heard, UUFBR has engaged the assistance of the Hope for Us Southern Region Conflict Resolution Team. They will help us work through a process to be better able to do what it takes to make this beloved community more unified, closer, and better able to talk through our feelings. Why? Why have we done this? Because conflict itself isn't bad. It's how we deal with it. It's vital that how we treat each other is that we can disagree in love. We can share a rich theology, and that means we can find our common ground. We can do this. Whatever we've been in conflict about is important, and it happened all before I came. And that's okay. I'm here now and I'm eager to get in and do the work. And it's important because if it wasn't important, we wouldn't have strong feelings about it, would we? And I'm sure that people may disagree with me, but I will say whatever the conflict has been about, it's not as important as the relationships we hold with each other, our faith, and our responsibility to live out our UU values in the world. That's what we're here for. There are very difficult things going on in our community, our state, our nation, and beyond. The world needs the saving theology of Unitarian Universalism now more than ever before. Consider the phrase attributed to Benjamin Franklin upon the signing of the Declaration of Independence. He said, "We must hang together, or most assuredly we will all hang separately." These are perilous times, my beloveds. Whether we're born into it or we find it later in life, we must continually make and remake the decision to live into our theology. We must choose each other over and over again. We who love the principles of our progressive faith, who are both held and challenged in community. Reverend David Rankin says, "A religion that promises a life without tension, without conflict, a life without suffering is a religion of passivity, a religion of mediocrity, a religion of insignificance. Everything worth doing is a desperate gamble, a game of chance where nothing is certain. What is love? Is it not a wild and sublime speculation that can end in ecstasy or despair? What is courage? Is it not a hazardous risk of fortune that can end in victory or defeat? What is adventure? Is it not a blind leap in the dark that can end in joy or disaster? What is faith? Is it not a prayerful flip of the coin that could end in heaven or hell? Which, as Unitarian Universalists, we make right here, by the way. If I refuse to play the game, if I refuse to risk myself, if I refuse to throw the dice, I am never really alive. I am then only flesh, baking in the sun on a middling plateau with no view of the valley and no road to the peak. End quote. A congregation isn't a building. It isn't a fund. It isn't a program, and it isn't even a worship service. A congregation is a deliberately chosen group of people who care about each other, who treat each other with respect, who behave lovingly. We do our best, and we might mess it up. But when we make mistakes, we're in covenant. We return to it over and over again. We share our feelings and we call each other back into our values so that we may collectively act out the mission and values of love and justice in the world that call to us so strongly. And it doesn't mean that we're a family. We're not a family, because you don't necessarily choose your family, right? Y'all chose me. We who belong to this congregation chose to be here. You chose me. I choose you. We choose each other over and over again. I'm reminded that we may have emotional wounds and scars. We may trip over a hurt spot accidentally, unintentionally. We might cause pain, even if we don't mean to. But it is in recognizing that and attempting the repair that deep connection happens. That's what I'm here for. I want to see that. We're doing that because why should we, right? Why examine our connections? We have to move forward in a healthy way. We can't drag the past behind us. We got to do this. We have to turn and face each other with compassion, kindness, gentleness, and above all, love. Anna Bladel from Unfleshed says, all around me I see love swirling, ferocious love, liberating love, love that leaves no one out, leaves no one behind, leaves no one alone. Love that refuses siloing and zero-sum games of divide and conquer. Love that risks it all. Love that fights to stay open-hearted, tender, soft, here. Love that fights to be with and for each other. This congregation is a sacred trust. It's a living organism that is larger than any one of ourselves. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could be assured of this congregation continuing far after any of us are alive? And the way that we do that is by knowing that no single one of us are vital, but all of us together are. We are a larger whole. This group has, is, and will do incredible things. And that returns to the final line of the John Donne poem. He ends the poem by stating, ask not for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. All of us have a bell that's going to get rung. So let's do what we can while we're still here in these physical bodies. What a magnificent gift you are. Donna Ashworth says, if every single person who has liked you in your lifetime were to light up a map, it would create the most glitteringly beautiful network you can possibly imagine. Throw in the strangers you've been kind to, the people that you've made laugh or inspired along the way, and the star-bright network of you would be an impressive sight to behold. You're so much more than you think you are. You have already done much more than you realize. You're trailing a bright pathway that you don't even know about. What a thing indeed. Amen. Blessed be, and Ashe.